Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions 4 p.m. BST on a Thursday. In depth, this time we have Shane Oglow. How you doing, Shane?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Do you want to let the guys know what you've been up to this week? I'll share it to the groups and then we can get into your story.
Just working like a madman, crazy long 16-hour days, but just working on marketing, brand building, all the stuff that I'm doing with PR Reach, and just nose to the grindstone.
Excellent. Give me a second. What else have you been covering? I'm just going to do this share. And do you want to just talk about what's going on with PR Reach? It's the partnership you have with Norm, isn't it?
Yeah, Norm Farrar is my partner there, and everybody knows him as the beard guy. He's got the iconic beard. And the cool thing about hanging with Norm and being with Norm is, and maybe the young millennials won't get this, but a lot of times people might think that we're ZZ Top. So that's pretty cool, hanging out with a guy with a beard. But what we did with PR Reach is it was the world's first video press release company, and we've been transforming it slower than I would have liked to have done, but we're transforming it into a vertically integrated media and communications company. So we're moving more heavily into the branding, public relations, earned media, content. We're starting. We have a couple of studios, film studios, and we're starting to pump out Amazon videos, brand videos, demo videos, those types of things, market review videos. So, Norm and I both come from a pretty heavy Amazon background, obviously, but he has a much more diverse background on the e-com space than I do. So there's a lot of interesting areas we're moving into with PR Reach. It's all very, very exciting because, we're really getting results for people and that's what it's all about, right? Otherwise, there's no point in doing this.
Totally agree. Right, nearly done. Okay, let's go back to your childhood. When was the first time you realized you had an entrepreneurial background or a feel for entrepreneurship?
Good question. And do I need to be laying on a couch for this? Is it okay? I'm just sitting down.
No, this isn't the therapy session, but I think, and hopefully we don't send anyone to sleep, but we'll get to a point when we start talking about getting shot and stuff. I think it's going to be an important part of the story. So everyone should be staying awake for this for sure. So talk to me first memories of entrepreneurship. Was it very young? Did you have the lemonade stand kind of thing?
No, when I was a kid, I just wanted to be a soldier and or a spy, maybe both. And that lasted until my adulthood. I still do want to be that, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. But and I tried to, actually. I tried to join the KGB after the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, but we'll talk about that another time or later.
As we get into it,
Yeah, but I think that I didn't really have a huge. See, I came from a family that had their own businesses. My dad and my uncle had a business that my grandfather and his brothers started back in the 60s. And we still have that business. So, I always had to work there. And, part of it was great and part of it sucked because, when you work with family, you're a little bit lazier than you probably should be. So I was probably the worst employee ever. But I don't know. I saw that, it wasn't easy. It's a struggle, and to be honest, I was a little bit more envious of the people who had that regular job at the mill. You go home when you're done work, you're done work. You got that paycheck, you got the house, the boat, 2.5 kids, and away you go. And that seemed pretty reasonable. But I grew up in a very small town. But once I end up getting out into the world and moving to the coast, I grew up in the interior of British Columbia. I moved to Vancouver, went to school, and you start to get your eyes open and understand things and realize things. But it wasn't until I was at least in my mid-20s before I thought, no, I'd rather start doing my own thing. Like, I've done a lot of jobs over the years.
Let's dial it back. So you left school. Was school something that you were into? You were academic or?
Not really. I'd say school was pretty damn tough for me in a way. I struggled. And the main reason I struggled, I think, was I had some real confidence issues that came up when I was early teenager. And a couple of things happened. Number one, my mom left us. And, hey, she had her demons. Actually, she just passed away this year, but she had her demons. And, it's sometimes hard for me not to fault her. But at the same time, I completely understand, her life wasn't easy. But anyways, it kind of left me. It didn't really bother me that much. At least I didn't think so. Versus my younger brother, who struggled a lot more. But that, and I got you've probably seen the scar beside my eye.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool. The chicks dig it. And I tell lots of funky stories. I always tell a different story about it. In reality, it was pretty damn boring. When I was about 13 or so, my eye was coming out a little bit, like protruding out a bit, and we couldn't figure out why. I went to the doctor, and they couldn't figure out why. They thought I had cancer to my entire body, or like there's all these theories. And finally figured it out. There was a tumor that was growing in behind my eye that was wrapped around the optic nerve that was growing and pushing the eye out a bit. So we'd gone to the coast, and the doctor, figured it all out. They did CAT scans and stuff, and they basically said, "Hey, we need to cut this thing out. There's a chance you could lose your vision. We don't really know much about it, but we can't, or we shouldn't really do it until you stop growing, because they had to go and they cut a piece of bone away to get to it. And if we do that, you have a big dent in your head for the rest of your life." So I'm like, let's just wait until I think I was 17 or 18 and I had it removed. So I was really self-conscious about that. And it wasn't so much about, just having this disproportionate eye coming out, which is tough enough as a teen anyways, because you don't want to look different, right?
Fucking brutal, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But the big problem was that they didn't know if it would dislodge and go into my brain and kill me instantly. So I had to quit playing hockey. I was told I shouldn't bang my head. I couldn't get in a fight. I couldn't do anything that would jeopardize this. Now, I didn't follow those rules strictly, but it was always in the back of my head, so I felt I had to back down too often, and I got out of the competitive sports, and that really pissed me off. I guess the good thing about it, though, was I skied more, because, it's just skiing, and that was great. But yeah, and I think that affected me. And I think that after that, I ended up, I don't know if this is the right term, but maybe I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder for a while, trying to make up lost ground, in those years after that happened. And that does affect people. And, I'm sure there's other people out there who would have been water off a duck's back, but not for me. I always have to learn the hard way to do everything.
But then you're going to be, you're in your teens, you're self-conscious, and you're still developing, aren't you? So if everyone else is looking one way and then your eyes coming out here, obviously I take it that kids were kind of bullying you, whether it's verbally or whatever, with it. And so that's going to make anyone self-conscious,
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it wasn't that bad. It wasn't horrible. It's like I went to school and people threw rocks. There's a couple of people who I would have liked to pop in the head, but, I didn't. And, but that's life. That's the way she goes. And I'm sure that there's, it's easy to look back and think about the negative things, but I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of positive things that came out of that in that development in character, even though it might have taken a couple decades to squeeze out of me.
So did you make it a university or anything, or did you go straight into work?
Yeah, no, I did. I went down to BCIT, British Columbia Institute of Technology, and I took the international trade program. I didn't finish it. I got bored, and I didn't want to do it. And the funny thing is so I worked before that. I didn't go straight from school down to the coast. I got a job at what was called Caminco at the time. It's now Caminco Tech, and it's a lead, silver, gold refinery. They make fertilizer and stuff too. And anyways, I had that job for maybe a year and a half or something. And just a kid out of school, I was making, back then, late 80s, it was like, $25 an hour or whatever. It was like, oh my gosh, it was like the best thing ever, right? But I remember I would come to work and I would be almost in tears. And I had no effing idea why. I had a great job. I had a cool, hot girlfriend and this cool little convertible sports car. What the hell was wrong with me? I started to think maybe I was lazy or so. I didn't know. I couldn't be stuck in that box. Like when my youth, I was looking at other kids' parents and thinking, oh man, wouldn't it be better if my dad had like a 9-to-5 job with a steady income? All that went out the window when I got into those shoes myself, and I realized that's not what I want. And hey, if some people are perfectly happy with that, and that's cool. We're all special and unique snowflakes, right? But It wasn't for me. And that was the first time, going back to maybe that first question, which I just realized, that was the first time I realized I couldn't do that. I just could not do that. And I quit. And nobody quit that job. Nobody. I quit that job. I was actually going to school, a Japanese school, to learn Japanese at the same time. So I was burning the midnight oil, just learning and working. But I went to the coast, went to BCIT, to the International Trade Program, and it was really good. I learned a lot, but it was just too refined. We're taking 8 to 9 courses a semester. It was nuts, like stats and business math and economics. It was just too much. And after a year, because you do 2 years in one, right? It's a 2-year program. You're supposed to do 4 years in 2. I was like, screw this, and I left. And I did a bunch of jobs, but that's when I started to look, going back to my youth of wanting to, to shoot people and be a spy and stuff, which is kind of a weird thing to say.
We'll get to the spy and the shooting stuff in a bit. Yeah. Where do we go from here? So you're at the uni, you're done there, you dropped out, you've done the jobs, and then you realised you hated the job that you was doing. No one walks away from that job. Where was next?
So the next thing was I actually got a job. There's a few small jobs in between, but as a collections person, like on the phone, calling up people if they got a debt. And I didn't work there for very long, maybe 6, 7, 8 months. But when I was there, I met this guy named Dan, and I'll leave his last name out. He's probably retired by now, but Dan had been accepted into the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And he was just waiting for his intake to come out to go off to basic training. But Dan had done his, I'm just going to say it, actually. I know we talked about this before, but he had done his 5-year stint in the French Foreign Legion. And I didn't even know what that was. I mean, I'd seen Beau Geste and I'd seen these movies, and I was like, what are you talking about? And he regaled me with all these stories, being in French Guyana and Djibouti and all these crazy things he was doing. And I was like, oh man, that sounds so cool. That's the adventure I'm looking for. But in the meantime, I actually got hired as a private investigator. And the guy I worked for was an Englishman, and he was a former Scotland Yard detective. His name was Bernie Major. He's a wonderful guy. He was in his 70s at that time. He's just a wonderful, wonderful man, and I loved him dearly. And he took me under his wing to some degree. But the deal was to come on with this firm called Major Investigations. I had to do an undercover stint, and I did, and that lasted, I don't know, maybe 4 months or something. I had to go undercover with a major freight delivery company, trying to find out where product was being stolen in the supply chain. But the crappy thing is nobody except the company president practically in Toronto knew that I was a private investigator. So I had to apply. I had to get hired like a normal person would. I mean, they greased the wheels to get me in, but I had to start working in the back of these, the big trailers, tractor trailers that pull up and you unload. It's hot and dusty, and it's just crappy job loading freight onto these things. But if you worked hard, you quickly graduated off the trucks onto the main floor where you're dispersing stuff, and I could keep an eye on things. So I worked my butt off. I got in there, and long story short, we found out where the product was going missing, and I got all the accolades and everything. But the cool thing is every night I had to write up a report on what happened during that day. So I'd go usually to a coffee shop or something. You get off work around midnight, go to a coffee shop, write my reports. But this is the first time I've admitted this. I fudged the reports just a little bit, because I used to get reimbursed for doing activities outside of work. I was encouraged to do that. So I would kind of change the language and be like, so-and-so suggested we all go parachuting this weekend or jet skiing. But it was really
you could claim your expenses.
Oh my gosh, it was awesome. We did the best stuff ever that summer, because it was all paid for. But anyways, that was sort of the first adventurous job I'd had. It was really neat too, because Bernie was a neat guy. Like he at the time there was only one billionaire in British Columbia. But he knew all the top people, and we didn't take little pissant jobs. We did big things: extortion, kidnap, a lot of insurance claims. So I got to meet some really interesting, influential people and do a lot of really cool stuff. And learning about psyche and behavior and people's tells when they're lying, and just these little things that Bernie, these little tips and tricks he'd give you along the way. He was a remarkable man. But anyways, that was my first sort of stepping stone to doing something out of the norm, I guess.
So how long did that last? Were you doing that project?
I was probably there for about a year and a half. Maybe a year and a half, something like that.
You covered off a lot of ground there. You said extortion, kidnapping. Mm-hmm. I mean, were you ever a subject to being kidnapped or close to it in those given situations? Did you ever get rumbled in terms of your cover was blown?
No. Well, the only thing that happened to me in that particular, like when I'm talking about kidnapping and extortion, we had high value clients who had these things happen to them or their family members, and the police were at a standstill. So we were brought in to try and, find some new openings. But I actually did a second undercover job for them, but it only lasted about 2.5 weeks before. I guess their suspicions were too high. It was actually with longshoremen, and there was sabotage happening on the docks with the loading and rigging equipment, loading the ships. Yeah. But I don't think I did anything to jeopardize myself there. I just think it's just too tight of an inner circle for me to break into quickly. And by that time, I was done with that type of stuff. Anyways, I was not sorry to be pulled off of it and go do other things, but. Yeah.
So where was next after that one? Sorry, go on.
Well, just the one interesting thing that happened to me there, and actually I pissed off my bosses, is I caught a bank robber one day, and that was pretty cool because I was driving downtown Vancouver. I had my little surveillance van, like it was like a 1985 Dodge Ram type van, right, with blacked out windows. I mean, how obvious can it be? But I saw this dude come running around the corner, and he knocked over some old lady. He had like a bag in his hand or something. And he just like plowed her over. And I thought, screw that. So I threw it in the park right in the middle of the road, jumped out, left the door open, and just started running after him. I didn't really think about it. It's probably not the smartest thing to do, but I ran. I was, pretty fast runner at the age, so it didn't take me too long. Maybe about a block before I caught up to him. But I kept kind of yelling at him, a lot of profanities and like, dude, I'm going to take you down. You better just stop. Like, it's only a matter of time. I'm going to reel you in, dude. Until he stopped and pulled out a knife and tried to stab me. Yeah. And I was like, holy crap. I wasn't quite expecting that. Like, I just thought he knocked over some old lady. I don't know what the hell he's running for. Some goofball, right? So I wasn't going to let him get away with it. He missed me. He was a bit of a clown. But I kept after him. But I kept my distance. Anyways, I chased him into a parkade, and he, as I was coming in, and as we came into these doors, he went up a stairwell, and just as he came in, or just as we entered, before we entered the stairwell, a motorcycle cop came screaming around the corner, like laid his bike down, jumped off his bike. I said, he's in there. The guy pulls out his gun and look up. He's like, stand back, and he kicks down the door, and we run up the stairs, and we chased him out down the stairwell and into like a train yard. And by that time, I mean, there must have been a dozen cop cars. I think even a helicopter was overhead, all kinds of stuff. So I was like, holy crap, that was pretty fast. Like, I mean, someone must have seen me from the very beginning and reported it. I don't know, like how these cops show up. So anyways, the guy said, oh, thanks for your help, son. And I left him like, yeah, no problem. And I walked back up, it must have been 7 blocks away, the vehicle, because I chased him for a while. My van was still sitting there in the middle of the road, door open, the engine running. Got in and drove away. And it turned out later in the local newspaper, the province, it said, local unknown man catches bank robber, or helps, something like that. I was like, holy crap, that was me. I had no idea he just robbed the bank. Yeah. But my bosses were really mad because I didn't stick around to say, Shane Oglow of Major Investigations. I didn't
get a plug in there to get more work. Yeah. So
where did we go? I got a reward for that. About a year later, a check showed up for like $1,500 or something. I was like, sweet, thanks, guys.
That's not bad, is it? $1,500 bucks for being nearly stabbed and chasing the bank robber. You do it again?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm joking.
You got to be the good guy, man. You got to be the good guy.
Exactly. So where do we go next? So we've dealt with espionage, we've dealt with bloody dealt with knives and bank robbers, and so where was the next adventure?
Well, I quit Major Investigations, which is another thing I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, because it was kind of a dream job. I really liked it, and I really loved Bernie. But adventure called, and Dan laid the tracks for me. So I decided I was going to go to Europe and join the Foreign Legion. But I had a backup plan. Sorry, I'm missing a step here. I forgot about that. Sorry. When I was in Canada, when I was working with Major Investigations, I was interested in CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, which is the Canadian spy agency. And I'm bloody thankful I never got in. But anyways, I went through a series of interviews with them, and they ended up rejecting me because I hadn't finished my bachelor's degree. And I was really pissed, actually, at the time, because I was like really gung-ho on doing that. And I'd considered going back to school to finish the bachelor's degree, but I thought, I was all about the shortcuts, right? So I kept that in the back of my mind. And, obviously the Foreign Legion thing came up, and I thought, no, that'll be pretty cool to do. And my backup plan was, if I didn't get into the Legion, I was going to go and join the KGB. Yeah. Because I did speak Russian a little. My Russian's not great, but I get by, and I'm sure it can improve enough. That was it, man. I was after adventure, and nothing was going to stop me. So I went to France, and I went to Paris, Fort de Nogent, and joined the Foreign Legion. Now, I wasn't there for a long time. I ended up leaving. We don't have to get into all, because there's about 100 stories in between there and another thing, and those are more stories for having a pint or two. Yeah. But some wonderful people, and while it was a very difficult, very physical, a lot of beatings. It's a very old school type military, not like these pussy military things nowadays where everybody has rights and you can't touch someone. It's hardcore. You say something wrong, you get punched in the face, you get kicked in the head. So while that was kind of shitty, and I really got hurt actually quite badly a couple of times. I don't really remember those things. I remember the good stuff. I remember the cool dudes I hung out with and the crazy characters. But this is one kind of funny story is what I got hurt, and they sent me to a hospital in Toulouse. And so I was there for, 4 days or something like that. They sent me back to my unit, and which was in the south of France at the time. And I had to go into quarantine because I was there. I came after hours. That's just standard protocol. If you come after hours, everything's locked up. They lock you in at night, right? Mm-hmm. So anyways, I was in the medical hut, and there's a British medic there. And we're just chatting. He's like, "Oh, you're Canadian?" He goes, "Oh, you got to meet Popov." I'm like, "Popov? Why would I want to meet a Russian guy?" Like, again, I grew up in a Russian community in Canada. So, in the phone book, there's 3 pages of Popovs, right? Mm-hmm. And anyways, this guy comes out. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's Canadian. And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And we started chatting. And he's like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, a little small town in BC. He's like, "Oh, me too." "Where are you from?" He goes, "Where in BC, I'm like, "Oh, it's kind of place. It's, basically it's in the Kootenays. It's called Castlegar." He's like, "Oh, cool." He goes, "I grew up in Blueberry Creek." I'm like, "Well, I grew up in Blueberry Creek. I mean, who do you know has grown up in Blueberry Creek? There's 300 people there, right?" Yeah. I don't know, something like that. There's not even a store, right? It's so small. You know what I mean? But he was about, maybe 8 years older than me. And he had, maybe a little bit more than that, actually. And he had, joined the Legion a long time ago, and he was a sergeant. He used to be a sergeant, but he deserted. And at that time, the Balkans war was going on, and he had deserted to go and fight for Croatia because they were paying really good bucks. And he convinced me that I needed to go with him. What happened was he got shot. He got shot in Croatia, and he was actually injured literally on the side of the road. And who comes along is a patrol, a French Foreign Legion patrol. They pick him up. They ID who he is. So they bring him back. They slap his wrist. They fix him up. They throw him in jail for a little while, demote him back down to a Legionnaire. And he was just finishing up his time. He said, well, why don't you meet me at Christmas time in London? You could come with me. And, he regaled me with all these great stories about how awesome it would be. And I thought that sounded like a wonderful idea. So I left Legion earlier than I anticipated. And I was in touch with his sister, who was still living back in Blueberry. And unfortunately, maybe it was shortly before Christmas. I can't remember the exact dates, but he was killed. He actually went to Croatia early, and he got hit by a stray mortar round or something with a bunch of guys in the building. And I obviously never followed that up and never went there, because you kind of need to have a contact. But yeah, that sucked. But I look back and I got a really good friend, Richard, who's in Sweden, who, I was going through a really tough time in my life when I got divorced around 2006 and somewhere around there. And I basically called up Richard and said, dude, I don't know what to do. He's like, just come and live with us. He had shit going on. Like, he had a wife and kids, and like, he didn't need me there. But those are the types of things, those friendships you forge in those situations. Life.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? You left the Legion.
Yeah. I came back to Canada, and I ended up joining the Canadian military because I didn't know what the hell to do with myself, and except sort of carry a gun around. Which is really neat. The Canadian military. I mean, I love the Canadian military. It's, I miss the military, period. What I think one of the things I like about it is kind of like the tradition and the pomp and the circumstance. I really enjoy that. And, I joined a Highland regiment, so you get to march around in your kilt, and it's pretty cool. But of course,
I bet you look lovely in a kilt.
I do.
Yes.
I ended up being, top candidate out of training because, and I don't want to put down the Canadian military because there's some wonderful professional soldiers there, but it was bloody easy compared to the Legion. Nobody's going to kick me in the head for saying the wrong thing. Like, it was a breeze. So, I aced it. But, my time with the military is over. I knew I wasn't going to get any action there. It was more of a habit. It was something to do in the meantime.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting married and having kids. But when I was in the military, I decided that it was pre-children. I thought I would become a bodyguard.
Yeah.
So I ended up, and in fact, it's an Englishman, Jim Short, double T at the end, Jim Short. You can probably Google him. He has got he runs the International Bodyguard Association out of South Croydon, Surrey, I think. And he runs courses worldwide on, counter espionage, counter sniper, all kinds of stuff, bodyguarding stuff. I thought, oh, cool. And he had this really cool course coming up in Vegas to get certified as a bodyguard. And then, I could do some different work there. And that was a lot of fun. Like, that was like the most fun ever. But he shot me by accident one day when we were out in the desert in Las Vegas, which is kind of funny. But and I, that organization, the International Bodyguard Association, I think it was Louis Van Ott. I think his name was the guy who started, and I think he was the personal bodyguard to Charles de Gaulle. And I guess Jim knew him and sort of took over the organization. I assume it's still around. I mean, I haven't looked at his website in years, but I assume it's still around. But once I was done that, what happened was kids started to come along, and that wasn't a reasonable thing to do as a dad, I guess, or so I'm told. So that's when I decided to jump in and start my own business, because I didn't want to be fenced in. Don't fence me in, right? So I started a small business, like a little printing business. It was a total abject failure, of course. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I did my best, and that didn't quite work out. But I got really interested in finance at the time, so I started taking courses, securities courses. Futures, options, equities, bonds, just understanding the whole process. And through what's called the Canadian Securities Institute. It's the only place in Canada you can get certified. If you want to be a mutual fund advisor or whatever you want to do, that's where you got to do it. And I ended up getting my options license and my futures license, and I ended up working for a company that has been bought out. It's called TD Waterhouse now, or no, it was TD Waterhouse. Now it's TD Canada Trust. But I started off there trading equities, and it became one of the options traders in the office, and that was pretty cool. It was a little bit boring because I was mostly dealing with order flow, and there was an opportunity at that time. This is 2000 this is 1999, somewhere around there, 98, 99. And I worked there for a while, and this opportunity came up to do something called proprietary trading. And there was a company that opened up. I was in Victoria, BC at the time, on Vancouver Island. And there was an opportunity to work trading other people's money, and you keep a commission, right? So I ended up doing that. It was equity trading. It wasn't options. And you're trading. Well, we started off exclusively on the NASDAQ, and that just exploded. I had tremendous success there.
Were you running around like Gordon Gekko, were you?
Yeah, maybe not quite. Not quite that big, no. But I've always had this idea that I want to do something really well that other people weren't able to do, or most people weren't able to do. That was always kind of my thing. I want to be the square peg, the round hole. But I went through a lot of hard times too. So the first 2 or 3 years were fantastic. Made all kinds of money. Trading really evolved. Like, it really changed rapidly. And now, to be honest, there's probably more honor in selling crack on the street corner there is in the financial markets. The markets are constantly crossed. There's dark pools of liquidity. There's all kinds of stuff that didn't exist before. But I remember one day, it was my first day I'd ever made $10,000. Made $10,000 in a day, and I was like over the moon. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And I went out to a mall, and I went and got like a burger or something. I made that money in 3 hours. And I went and I got a burger, and I just saw this kid working behind the counter, making $8 an hour or whatever he's making. And I was standing there, and I could feel it go from my head to my toe. I was just washed in guilt, extreme effing guilt. And I thought, oh my God, I played around on a computer, hit a few buttons, and I made 10 grand. And this guy's sitting there getting grease burns, and he's never going to make that money in 6 months. And it really affected me. And it kind of messed me up a little bit. And I really struggled with that. Anyways, long story short was I had a bit of a disagreement with the owners of the franchise. And I started my own trading company with a few partners. And at first it went really well. Or not really well, but it was okay. But it went downhill fast. And one of the reasons was there's a psychological difference between trading someone else's money and your own money. And, a lot of people had told me that was going to happen. I was like, I'm fine. We're going to New York. We're hanging out and going to parties at the NASDAQ. And, we were doing some pretty incredible stuff. I think, certainly for me, some goofball from small town in Canada, but it started to affect me, and the advent of HFTs, or high frequency trading machines. That totally ruined the market because I was a technical analyst. I was running off charts, human psychological patterns. But if a buy program is going on a computer, the buy program doesn't care what your psychological barrier is. The buy program is going to keep buying until it runs out, period. When it runs out, then it'll go the other way. So it just barges its way through the market either way. And I still kick myself to this day because I love trading. I love it. That I didn't adjust and get into the high frequency trading market at the time, because a lot of guys at MIT and places like that were just like struggling to find people who knew what they're doing so they could build these programs, making $1 million a month. But I was like, no, this is illegal. Because I remember if I used to cross the market with a bid going across, if I crossed above the market, we get a call from the SEC. Like in 5 minutes, the phone would ring and say, "What kind of an asshole in your office is doing this?" Now the markets are permanently crossed. I'm like, oh, I'm sure the regulators are going to clean this up soon. This can't last. Well, here it is. 20 years later, it's still like that. So that was my bad that I didn't jump on that bandwagon, and I really regret not doing that. But it is what it is. But what happened was we brought that business down because it wasn't doing anything. I just traded my own money after that, and it ruined my life completely. And a lot of it was due to my own pride and arrogance. Got divorced. It was just a shit. And I was probably a pretty damn difficult person to live with at the time. Again, pride is a horrible, horrible thing, and I wasn't going to demean myself by doing another job. I mean, which is such a silly thing to think, but for some reason my brain went there. So I ended up moving to Europe with my friend Richard for a while, and when I was living in Sweden and up in Umeå up north, which is a wonderful little place. I had this, maybe I'd watched Long Way Round or something with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman. I'd read the book, and I've always had this fascination with Lake Baikal. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Ukraine because, I can speak a bit of Russian. I should be okay. And I'm going to buy one of these old motorcycles called a Dnieper. They don't make them anymore. They stopped making them in the 80s. They're like an Ural. And I'm going to ride to Lake Baikal. Stupid thing to do. Anyway, so I went to Ukraine, and one thing led to another, and started meeting some friends. And as I like to call Ukraine, it's the land of the trophy wives. I was inclined to stay. I was enjoying myself, and I was going back and forth between Canada and Ukraine, and seeing my kids and trading and having good months and horrible months, and it wasn't sustainable. But eventually. Eventually, I end up staying there a little bit longer. I did do one little stint where I flew to Georgia to join the Georgian military when the Russians invaded there. And I just showed up. I was like, hey, guys want some help? They're like, who are you? What's going on? I'm like, yeah, I've been in the Army. I can do this, the other thing. And they're like, okay. So they gave me an AK-47. I'm like, you know how to use it? I'm like, yeah, sure. Rack it a few times and let's go. They basically took me. And I remember going on a bus, going up to the mountains in this region called the Tusheti region. Yeah. And as I'm going on this bus, these guys, I don't speak Georgian. Georgian's like this language. It's all squiggly lines. I can't even, phonetically make it out, right? All these tractor trailers are coming back with like burnt out tank shell hulls and stuff. And I thought, what the hell am I doing? Just because I couldn't trade, I'm going back to this. But nothing major happened. The war was pretty much over by the time I came there. All we were doing was observing the columns going back towards Russia. But I don't know why I did that. That was kind of a weird thing to do, especially at that age. But I went back to Ukraine. I thought, no, that's it. I got to get things in order. And then met my wife shortly thereafter, soon-to-be wife, and she ended up immigrating to Canada, and did all kinds of stuff, until, including the assistant manager of a bank because I saw my trading experience. Worst job ever working in a bank.
Abuse of the public. So we're dialing in down to the last 20 minutes. Let's start getting into some of the Amazon stuff now. Because obviously I want to make sure that's covered because you were there early doors, weren't you? So first things first, is it right for you to say who your half brother is? Because I don't think a lot of people know in the community, do they?
No, that's fine, and that's how I got introduced to the Amazon thing. Jason Katzenbach, who was the co-founder of Amazing, got me into it. And Jason was always very entrepreneurial, and he was doing all kinds of stuff online. And I was like, oh no, it's silly, all the spammy stuff he's doing. But the funny thing is I saw the first iteration come out of what was called Amazing Selling Machine, right? And I think it was called Amazing Money Machine or something. And I thought, oh man, it looks so spammy. And then I saw ASM1 come out. He launched it. He partnered with Matt Clark at the time. And I thought, what is this spammy crap I'm seeing in my Facebook feed? Like, what the hell, man? So I messaged him and I said, what's going on with this Amazon thing? And his reply, and if your little brother ever says this to you, you got to act. It was, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something like, if you don't get in on the Amazon bonanza right now, then you're an effing idiot.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, my little brother says that there's got to be something going on there. So I jumped in. I did the training just like anybody else. I mean, he was so busy. It's not, and he's like, look, dude, here's a training. You can do this. I can't help you. Certainly not much. Like, maybe every now and then give me a call if you got a question, but for the most part, you're on your own. I'm like, yeah, don't worry about me, dude. I'll be fine. So, and I was determined from day one. At that time, I was working at the second worst job I've ever had in my life. I was a manager at a military civilian airport, managing the checkpoint, like the screening operations. And it was a unionized job. Man, that union mentality, forget it, dude. Another reason why I could never be in that space. But anyways, I was like, no, I'm going to make this work, and this is going to be my full-time job. It took, 6 months or whatever to a year to do that. But I was 100% determined I am going to make this work.
What year was this when you landed? Was it 14, 15?
Yeah, it must have been 2014. Yeah, 2014, I think. I'm always struggling with dates, but yeah.
First product out, I mean, did that go well? You're still selling it now, but...
No, the first product was these little electric tea lights, and it expanded quickly to other products, obviously. And I don't have any involvement with that brand anymore. But it was a great learning experience. And, the cool thing about at that time, obviously if I could do it differently now, I'd be making $1 million a month easy doing that, right out of the gate, because but you don't know what you don't know. At that time, there wasn't much resources or training available, very little, in fact. And as you know, things have changed so rapidly, which is, we all knew was going to happen, and still will continue to some degree. But it was real Wild West. Nobody knew what a hijacker was. Like, that was all developed during that period of time. Like all these little things that we don't even think twice about now. But it was a really good experience. And, they always put on an event every year, SellerCon, they call it now. But, I'd go to these events, and
they were called Amazing back then, weren't they? They were just under the same brand, and then it went to SellerCon. Is that right?
I think so. I think so. Yeah. It's for me, I don't even go and listen to the speakers for the most part. There's really not, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there's the odd speaker, maybe I'm kind of interested. For me, it's like a big family reunion. You get all these people that you're never otherwise going to see, and they've been in it for years, and some of them have gone on to do just amazing things. So yeah, it's a really neat community. And now that I'm living in Europe, I've really connected with. Well, I mean, I met you and Mark, and just so many great people.
We've been on the road quite a bit in terms of we speak together quite a lot, or when like pre-COVID, wasn't it? So that's how we met. But yeah, so you landed on Amazon. First product, did that product fail? Because I think you got to $1 million quite quick. You done it in the first year or so, didn't you? First 14 months.
Yeah. When I saw that little blurb on your thing, I was like, was it just under a year or just over a year? I can't remember. I think it was just under, but
that bit of blurb I took off your website anyway, so I didn't.
Yeah.
I think you told me before. I think it was more like it was between 11 and 13 months if you were to pin it down. Yeah, something
like that. Yeah. That first Christmas season hit, and it was like I couldn't believe it. I was like, "What the hell is this supposed to be happening?" Like,
tell me a little bit about that ride. Then, obviously, your first Q4, you're green. You're kind of a bit green when it comes to being online, because since we spoke, we haven't really talked about commerce or anything. So you said, I'm going to make this work. So you didn't really have pre-skills for that? Probably psychology for writing copy and stuff, but that's about it.
I don't even think that was very good, to be honest. I barely knew what a URL was, right? So I mean, if I can do this, anybody can do this. But you learn quick. I mean, you pick it up, and there's all kinds of characters who have been very successful in this business coming from really strange backgrounds. I kind of got lost where your question was, though. We got to Q4 as like, what was that like? It's a bit of a ride, yeah. So it's a bit of a freakish thing that happens if you're not used to it or not aware that it's coming. Yeah, and your first Q4, you're almost always going to be wholly unprepared with the amount of inventory you need to carry. And of course, they're sold out of everything, by December 3rd or something stupid like that. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe, I was selling, hundreds or thousands of units a day of some of these products. And that was amazing. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, if every day could be like Christmas. But you live and learn, and then you go through the Christmas hangover, of course.
January, yeah. Return season. So where do we go from there? You've hit your million. You've done your first Q4. Within that period, you've gone to 1 million. Where did you go from there? Was it a brand? Was it just a few products that you had, disparate products?
Yeah, it was just a few. I mean, by the time Christmas had come along, maybe I had 3 products or something evolved from that first one. And then it was just, I started to do more work with Amazing. So, and that's when Jason was like, "Oh, geez, hey, you're doing pretty good. Oh, that's really cool. And hey, would you mind helping out over at Amazing? Maybe you could mentor or something." I was like, "Sure." Like, literally, I just did it just like everyone else. I remember when I got my first sale. I remember I Googled the address. It was like some woman in Seattle. Because I was like, "Who the hell's buying my stuff?" And then I thought maybe Jason was behind it somehow. I'm like, "Did you arrange for someone to buy my stuff just to make me feel good?" Like, It's like, what the hell are you talking about? But I just went through it like everyone else, and started to grow the brand. I started to work a little bit with Amazing, doing mentoring, helping, a little bit of coaching. I'd show up at their live events and help out, and that was a lot of fun. Eventually, they asked me to help create the ASM course, which I did for, I think, ASM 5 and 6. It was 4 or 5 or 5 and 6. I can't remember. And that was really cool. That was really neat. It was fun to do. I, got to learn about how to make courses and videos and blah, blah, blah. A lot of stuff I didn't know anything about before. So that was fun. But, I had to move on. And, Jason and I did have a partnership, and that's great. And we still do have some involvement. But, I think a lot of people in the space either just killed it with the Amazon, or they got into Amazon related things, maybe software or coaching, or whatever they're doing. And that's pretty neat too, how we see all these industries spring up around wherever there's action. You're going to see things spring up around it. And that's what happened here. And I kind of did my own thing. I floated around, and eventually I got to meet Norm, my partner at PR Reach, and we ended up buying, or he bought PR Reach and then asked me to join him. And we got it from a friend of ours, Rob Burns, who's a great guy. He's in San Diego, and he started the company back in 2013 or 14 or something. It was literally the world's first video press release company. But Rob is, I don't know if he's going to watch this, but he's a little bit ADD when it comes to business. He gets very distracted. He's got great ideas, but he's off on the next thing. He's really aggressive that way. And I think he let it just kind of drift. So he had sold it to Norm. Norm asked me to come on. And, I think we could have got some things going a lot faster than we did, but we didn't. Here we are. It is what it is. But now we're really starting to pick up steam. We've developed some really interesting products and services that have been overwhelmingly successful for us in getting results. It was what I mean by successful. So here I am. Do I still have some involvement in Amazon stuff? Yeah. I always get bombarded with people wanting me to partner with them or to consult, and very rarely do I do those things. Occasionally with certain people, I'll have some amount of involvement, but it's a real time suck. And I got to tell you, I have a hard time saying no. It's probably why I have 5 kids, but I've really had to learn to say no to some things, as wonderful an opportunity or people they might be. Sometimes it just I don't want to do a half-assed job.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So I always asked two main questions, but before we get there, what's the roadmap for you now? You've got the Amazon business, but obviously you're more phased into doing PR Reach. You go out and do a bit of speaking. What's the timeline next couple of years? What are your plans, do you think?
Well, it's a good question. With this COVID, yeah. I mean, It'd be great to be able to be on the speaking circuit again, or even if I'm not speaking, just being out at events is just such a wonderful thing to do, and we get to hang out and enjoy ourselves and have wonderful chats. But really developing PR reach, we actually, I suppose I can let the cat out of the bag here. Norm and I partnered up with two other fellows, Jason Ayers and Paul Barron. You probably know Paul quite well, I imagine.
Those chatbots and stuff, yeah.
Chat Marketing University. And we started a new business called the Chat Agency. And I think we're redefining the way people do launches. You know, our entire thing there is launches that don't cost you money. Worst case scenario, you're breaking even, but profitable launches and building nano influencer networks. And I'm talking about massive networks that basically do the heavy lifting for you. And, you know, we've got a patent pending process to do that. And I'm really looking forward to that. But growing that and PR reach, man, we're into public relations and earned media. So, you know, getting people published in high-end magazines and websites and you know, really pushing those high visibility, high traffic, high authority sites, you know, whether we're driving it back to your Amazon page, your Shopify store, you know, whatever, but building that brand. And, you know, here's the typical story. Somebody decides, hey, I'm going to start an Amazon brand. Cool. Then they realize, oh, geez, I better not be dependent on Amazon. They could pull the rug out at any minute. So they open up a Shopify store, or they want to start on Walmart or whatever they're doing. Oh man, now you're responsible for your own traffic. That's a totally different ball of wax. But when you can build a brand ahead of time, get some Google love going, so you're starting to show up on Google to some degree. You can get some high authority traffic things. You got some brand weight to take with you. Start to get some traffic. You know, it's a lot easier to make that transition to other platforms and marketplaces once you've got some brand authority and some brand building behind you. So that's what we're all about. Is we're, you know, building Amazon businesses, but beyond Amazon. And yeah.
Cool. So last two questions. Legacy or money?
I'd have to say legacy for sure. You know, we all know that money is important and you can't do things without it. But I've got a couple of things I'm really focused on that I want to complete in the next 10 years, helping kids. Love the little buggers, even though they make you crazy. That's what I want to do.
And how would you like to be remembered?
I don't know. I don't really have any. I want to be remembered as this. That I don't really care as long as the people I leave behind, you know, are good people. And I guess I shouldn't say I don't really care. It's just not the top of my thought.
You've not thought about it before, yeah? No.
Not really. No, I just want my kids to be good people and the people I associate with to, you know, hey, that Jim was a good guy. Let's have a beer. Cheers. And that's good enough for me.
So we're going to sign off now, but I actually forgot there was going to be one more thing I was going to ask you, and it's just escaped me. But anyway, if I remember it, I'll bring it up. What's the best way that people can reach you?
Probably through my PR reach, you know, Shane at prreach.com. Or, you know, just message me on Facebook or something too. That's fine. You know, whatever you want. But yeah.
Cool. Guys, we'll sign off now. I'll be back here for Mindset Monday. Enjoy your weekend. In the meantime, don't forget, if you haven't done already, go to sellerpole.com, brought to you by Fresio. Please go and vote if you haven't. And also check out our new free best and worst keyword tool so you can optimize your search terms. Go databrill.com/tool. Again, free tool, no sign up or anything. I'd love to get your feedback on it. We just released it into beta. Take care of yourself, look after your families, and I look forward to seeing you back here on Monday.